I'm so glad that you mentioned Syria, because ISIS obviously did horrific things in Syria and Iraq. And I'm curious if you think the general public has any idea of the savagery of some of the people that we're dealing with in that region of the world. And I want to preface this. When I was in college, ISIS was starting to become like a really big problem. And I remember I was a poli-sci major, which was the most useless degree in the history of the world. But we would have debates about, like, you know, the rise of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all this terrorism stuff. And there were kids at a major university that were saying there's really no difference between the terrorists and us. And they're only terrorists because we backed them into a corner. I'm like, you realize they're burning people in cages, right? Dude, how different is it compared to the reality on the ground when you're dealing with those animals?
Animals is exactly what they are. And people ask me about, some getting shot, losing teammates, PTSD, whatever it is, or if it's, taking another person's life. And I always said, I never felt like I ever took another person's life. I shot a lot of two-legged animals. I shot a lot of people that were not human and did not deserve to be on this earth. So I sleep like a baby at night. And ISIS, without a doubt, was the most, savage enemy we had come across. They had this young, when Raqqa was still their stronghold, they had this battalion called the Young Lions Battalion. And they were like 7 and 8-year-old kids. And they were training them to be soldiers, which isn't that unique, except their final exercise was they would put them through this like CQB shoot house, and they would have live people, like enemy, like POW, Kurds, Christians, bound and gagged. And the same way we would go through and shoot paper targets in a shoot house, they're shooting people on their final exercise, training these kids to murder. It's again, that Jordanian pilot that they set on fire alive in a cage. The Coptic Christians in Israel that they marched, I think it was 40 of them to the beach and just murdered them. The beheadings, you name it. They deserved everything they got and more. And to be honest with you, we should have gotten involved in that a lot earlier. That, the only mistake America made was not doing anything until they had taken over half of Syria and half of Iraq. And now we were like, maybe we should do something about this. And as I got older, I'm not the person that says we should be the world's police. I had no problem pulling out of Afghanistan. I have no problem of not being the world's police. But the moment they started cutting off American heads, we should have showed up. And we could have. And ISIS would have been a blip on the radar. But they cut off 5 American heads, and we still didn't do anything about it until they had almost taken over Iraq. It really was a blunder on America's part, to be honest with you.
Does it feel better killing someone like that compared to maybe, a regime loyalist, or maybe I hear a lot of guys talk about some of the guys they fought in Afghanistan. They almost, I wouldn't say feel bad for them, but they're like, is this guy purely evil? Maybe, maybe not. But they all say when it came to ISIS, it just felt better. Would you agree with that?
I would. I mean, the way I would rate it, if you will, and everyone will have a different, experience and a different answer. In Iraq, sometimes we were in the middle of, of a civil war, at some point, that at the Afghanistan, I respected the guys in Afghanistan. They always come out to fight, they're at least willing to die for their cause. But man, I really, really, really hated ISIS. I never walked by a dead ISIS body with anything other than just joy.
Were those
I know that sounds weird, but
no, it doesn't sound weird. No, it doesn't sound weird
telling
at
you.
all.
Yeah.
Where ISIS presented it, and I'm enjoying this a lot. I think our viewers are going to be fascinated by this, especially the younger ones. They projected, we're so tough, we're so violent, you can't reach the level that we get to. If you captured any of these guys, did they drop the tough guy act pretty quickly, or did they try to maintain that in custody?
But you had a good mix of like some of the foreign fighters that would come through, that they were tenacious, and they'd look at you like, man, if you'd take these flex cuffs off me, I'd choke the life out of you right now. I mean, they just stare at you with dead eyes. And but yeah, you get a mixture of everything, and there are plenty of ISIS fighters on the front lines, especially when the march to Raqqa was going on, that they didn't want to be on the front lines, but it was either stay on the front lines and fight, or um or retreat and get killed by ISIS. And you could still say, well, you still enjoyed watching them die, because yeah, like they raised their hand to come fight for evil, and then they found out what evil was, and so you already voted, you came to do this, and now be careful what you wish for.